Hey, what's going on, Purpose? How are you?
Hey, brother, how are you?
I'm doing well, doing well. How you doing this good old Tuesday?
Oh man, I just got through working out with my trainer. I'm feeling really good.
Oh, now you make me feel bad. I early morning workout because I was up all day listening to Brandy and Monica.
Same here, brother. Same here. I was like dragging my feet to the gym.
That's good. That's good. So everything's going well. Everything's good on your end.
Yes, sir. How about you?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. Let me just put this caption in right here. I don't know why I want to keep saying self-care Saturday instead of September. Perfect. And where are you? Are you
I'm in Brooklyn.
are you in New York? Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, they're just six feet apart. I'm in Queens.
Oh, okay. What part of Queens?
I'm in Jamaica.
Okay, cool. Cool.
Yeah.
I'm in Crown Heights.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. 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 All right. Did that there. Perfect. We good. So just again introduce everybody. Again, we're about to start our conversation, Self-Care September. And we really just want to, as an organization, we really want to start having these conversations and continuing these conversations that we already post a lot of content about it. But for the month of September, people are going back to work, kids are going back
Hmm.
to school. So there's a lot of things that are happening. And our team really thought that it was important for us to really dedicate a lot of conversations around self-care, how men of color can really focus on their self-care, what are the things that we should be doing, the conversations we should be having, um, the products, the services, all those type of things we should be looking into. And the first thing that we did do is have Purvis Taylor here. He is the author of Survival, Survival,
Survival mode. Yeah.
Survival Mode. Um,
Yes.
and he's going to get into talking about his book that really helps just kind of identify things and how specifically black or skipping men can move forward in this times that we live in. So again, thank you, Purpose, for joining us. Definitely appreciate it. But I just first things first, how are you feeling? Like, how was your mental as we kind of deal with the ever changing world?
Oh man, actually, I've been really good. I've actually been really, really good because I'm a person that does what I say and I just tell people to do it. So I actually the reason why I know things work is because I implement them myself. So I've been good. I've been, using my community. I've been, talking to my therapist. I've been praying. I've been, vocal and verbal about how I feel and the emotions that I'm experiencing without shame. So I'm good.
Perfect, perfect. So tell us, just how did you get into being a life coach and down this?
Oh man. The Cliff Notes version is I when I first moved to New York, I worked in the music industry. I worked at Def Jam Recordings, and I was signed to Wilhelmina Models. And from there, like my father, he died of a heroin overdose
Oh,
unexpectedly, and I went through a depression for like a few years, and in that depression, I asked God, I said, what's something that brings me joy? And the thing that has always brought me joy throughout my whole life is being that sounding board for people and helping people and seeing the best in people. So that was like the through line in my life. And I said, and I just thought about my life and the mistakes I made and the lessons that I learned. And I was like, yo, I could really help people. I had a desire to help people in the midst of my depression. And so that's really how I really started to become a life coach. And my father prophesied to me before he passed away that I would be doing the work that I'm doing today. So that kind of helped too.
listen, that's awesome. So were there any like classes that you had to take? Are there credential things, or is it
Yeah.
because I
Yeah,
think
no.
you'll see people, and I'm always I see people say, "Oh, I'm a life coach," and then they're like 21, and I'm like, have you had enough life to be teaching other people about life? So I
Right.
always side eye a little bit.
Yeah, no, 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 no. I have a master's in clinical psychology from Columbia University. So I do an integration of traditional coaching with, some psych approaches. I definitely am certified. I've definitely taken those courses, but beyond that, I feel like coaching is an anointing. It's like, like Whitney Houston. is more than just a singer. Like her voice was just so, you know what I mean? And so I think that there's a little bit of anointing with that. Not to be arrogant, but I do think that I was born to be a life coach. So I think, that just added the cherry on top that I took the courses and got degrees and things like that.
Perfect, perfect. So talk to us first about your book, Survival Mode. What is it, and what will people get out of it after they read it?
So Survival Mode is really a collection of men and my stories, men that I've helped to get to a place of wholeness who are now thriving, and my own personal narrative, being that I grew up being molested and homeless and having a father who was a drug addict, and I was bullied at school, emasculated, all those things that happened to me, and the lives of other men who've been through similar things or different experiences, and really the commonalities that we had that led us to a place of thriving. So the book is it's really, I call the 4 A's of survival mode, which are acknowledgement, acceptance, articulation, and alchemy. Those are the four things that all of us, the men that I work together, as well as myself, that we use to get us towards a place of wholeness and thriving. So the book is taking men from just surviving in life to thriving within their emotions and their mental health and their well-being. So people who read the book, you're going to learn tools to how to navigate through your emotions and your mental health and how to deal with trauma in a healthy way. I think it's a bridge. It's not, a lot of therapists have encouraged a lot of their male clients to read the book before going to therapy, because I think it opens you up to get you to a space where you want to be vulnerable, where you want to talk about it. So it teaches men how to expand their emotional lexicon. It teaches men how to be vulnerable and how to use sensory language when they're describing their experiences, and really it shows you that you are powerful enough to transform your life.
Wow, wow. So kind of breaking down the idea of Black men and their emotion,
Yeah.
specifically for us. Again, we always hear this conversation, and it's not, it's a conversation, but I feel like now we're starting to hear it and saying, it's not okay for the comment to be made, men don't hold their emotions, or men don't show their emotions, or you're too emotional, or saying that emotions is attributed to femininity and things
Yeah.
like. What is your thoughts on that, and like what is actual that emotion in those conversations specifically for men?
Well, the reality is that as a human being, you're going to experience emotions, right? That's just common. And I think the problem is that we have these norms, and we have a culture that says, to your point, that men are not allowed to deal with their emotions, right? It's deemed as weakness, it's deemed as feminine, it's deemed as a very negative thing. But the reality is that so many men, if you look at the suicide statistics, if you look at the depression statistics, men are going through a mental health crisis, especially Black men. So that tells me that there's a direct correlation between how we deal with our emotions and our trauma and our mental health. And so for me, it's a 911. We have to start addressing and experiencing and dealing with our emotions. And I think for so many of us, women included, especially during this time of COVID and the heightened racial climate that we're in right now, I think many of us don't want to we don't want to deal with our emotions. And I think that's the opposite. The healthy thing to do is to experience the emotion. That is a marker of your humanity. That's how you move to the next place. That's how you have a breakthrough, is if you experience the emotion, not suppress it, which is what we think is strength, right? But strength is really experiencing the emotion, being vulnerable to it, but not making any decisions based off of that emotion, letting that emotion subside, and then move to the next place. And I think for many of us, the culture doesn't teach us to do that.
And it's interesting because they talk about not having emotion or not showing your emotion, but there is one emotion that is okay, or I won't even say okay, but it's attributed to masculinity, and that's anger. It's okay,
Absolutely.
he's mad, or that's a man's man, or
Yeah.
that particular emotion, that's okay for you to show. But if a man is crying, you're weak. And one of the main conversations I want to continue to have is just dissecting that idea that having emotions, it's actually not good. Don't be angry all the time. Black men, they say Black women are always angry, but Black men have this anger attributed to them. It
Gotcha.
goes back to your point of the suppression, and it's
Right.
out how how do you not suppress the anger? How do you not suppress the emotions? How do you let it flow and still being comfortable in your own skin? Is it that you need to be comfortable in your skin to know that if I cry, I'm still a man? Or is that more of society being more of the catalyst to say it's okay for you to do X, Y, and Z?
Right. I definitely think it always starts and begins with us, with the individual. Like we are responsible for our mental health. You know what I mean? And you mentioned anger, and you know the two emotions that black men are most comfortable displaying are anger and indifference, right?
Mm.
And and the thing about anger is that that's the secondary emotion. The primary emotion is hurt,
Wow.
right? And then underneath that hurt is disappointment, and underneath that disappointment is an expectation that wasn't met. So my thing
Wait,
is
wait,
get
wait, wait,
yeah,
wait, wait. We got wait. Okay. So at first you're at anger, someone's
right.
upset. Then they're upset because they're hurt. Something hurt them.
Yeah.
They're disappointed,
Yes.
right? And then
Yes.
what's that last one?
Because an expectation wasn't met.
Because the expectation wasn't met. So do you start from that bottom of not having so many expectations that would then?
Well, so my thing is being able to identify whatever the expectation was, right?
Mm,
So say for instance, a father wasn't in your life. Your expectation was my father is supposed to be in my life. You get what I'm saying? But being able to pinpoint
right.
and trace that pathology, that's the point of dealing with your emotions, right? Because if you know how to experience them and not be afraid of them, you don't go immediately to anger. You can live in
Mm,
disappointment. You can live in the hurt, right? Which is just as
right.
powerful, right? And so here's the thing: if it does get to anger, this is my challenge to men always: is your anger going to be constructive or destructive? Right?
Mm,
So, for example, Rosa Parks, her anger, I'm not giving up my seat, that was constructive because that led to reform, right? But for many of us, our anger leads to destruction. And so
right.
that's the thing. That's why I think for men, it's important for us to, I don't want us to immediately go to anger. If you know how to experience your emotions, you won't necessarily get to anger always. You'll know how to talk yourself down. That's the benefit of being able to experience your emotions. Now, if you are going to get to anger, that anger needs to be constructive.
Mm.
Otherwise, it's a waste of time.
You
You
tell.
get what
Listen.
I'm saying?
Now I'm the one that kind of, I'm very um combative, and
Right.
it comes from a place of me not sticking up for myself when I was younger. So now that I'm older
Yes.
and no one can do, and I feel like no one can do anything, I'm ready. Would you say what happened?
Right.
What, and I jump to that anger, and then I forget all of those steps that you have. And I think what's so interesting that you said is that a piece of it is understanding where the expectation came from to understand why you have gone all the way to 100.
Right. And also, I'm the same way, brother. So like you're not gonna talk to me crazy. But
Right.
I also have to check that. I also have to heal that little boy who did not stand up for himself. And so that's part of it too, is the expectation I even have had of myself.
Right.
Why did you not buck back when they was talking crazy? You get what I'm saying? So it's
Right.
like even having that grace and compassion for myself and tracing pathology and even understanding that. Now I don't do that as much as I
Mm,
used to, because now I understand the source and where that comes from. And now I don't look at it from that aspect of the little boy who didn't defend himself. Now I'm looking at it as the grown man who's able to make the decision to see if I want to go down this rabbit hole or not. You get what I'm saying?
right.
So that is the importance of us being able to identify and experience our emotions and really sit. One thing men we're not able to do is be introspective, right? So
Mm,
you were able to pinpoint where that comes from. Most men
right.
cannot.
Right. Right. So how does one get to that? Is that, reading your book? I'm assuming that there's tools to be able to pinpoint that, right? And
Absolutely.
so there's resources, and that's so important that people need to pinpoint where the hurt is coming from that, is making them go that way. But I guess my other question too is a lot of times, there are things that kind of out of your control, but then there's also traumas that
Yeah.
black and either let me step back. How do men identify the traumas in their life? Because too many times, to your point, they don't necessarily know what happened. And I also don't think everything is a trauma. You know, I think everything, sometimes things are just situations or experiences, but sometimes there are actual traumas that people don't even know are traumas. Is there a way for you to kind of say, okay, this is a trauma I need to deal with?
You know, again, that time of introspection, that time of really sitting with yourself. And that's something I think men don't do often enough, where we sit back and examine our lives. We sit back and think about those moments, those things that have hurt us, those things that, you know, for example, I remember I was hired by an organization in DC to do a training for the entire staff. And they wanted me to work with the men first. And I remember just doing my whole spiel like I was molested, da da da. Because I always share that whenever, because I don't want anyone to ever feel like I'm here and you're here.
Right.
No, we're both here. So anyhow, I'm doing my whole spiel, and his brother, who was like, I guess you would say he was very hardcore Southeast DC, like normally
Yep.
would be packing if he wasn't at work. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yep.
And all of a sudden, this brother just starts shaking, and he starts crying. And I asked him, I said, "Is it okay if I put my hand on your shoulder?" And he's like, "Yeah." And he tells me, he said, "I'm crying because my mother died when I was 5 years old, and I never
Wow.
cried."
Wow.
But in that moment, he had a moment of introspection because I was being introspective.
Right.
So I created a space for him to be introspective. And he literally was 32 years old crying for the first time over his mother's death.
Wow. Wow.
And he understood the expectation is he didn't want his mother, he expected his mother to not die. And he recognized that he was all in that moment, all because that space was created for him.
Right.
So my thing is creating spaces for men to be introspective, creating healing circles. Like I do a lot of circle work with men, where we just dialogue, we just talk, we just put it all out there, just creating that safe space. Because I believe that transparency creates an environment for sharing. And so I think that's one of the biggest tools is creating a safe space.
Right. And I think, you know, we've done an event last year, pre-COVID, where we actually had an event and it was a group of men. We actually did it at the Gentleman's Factory in partnership with,
Oh, Jeff.
I see it, yeah, Jeff Linder.
Yeah.
And we did it with them. And what was so powerful about just the dialogue that you're having with people that look like us and having these conversations, is there was no judgment. And I think
Absolutely.
that's a piece of the conversations that everybody, if you're listening right now, finding people, as everyone are saying in the comments, that safe space where you can have the conversations, not be judged, and also be vulnerable. And I think that's a
Right.
big piece of men, Black men. It's that vulnerability that we are so afraid to show. And it's like you just want to keep preaching it. Like it's okay for
Right.
be who you are, but it's a challenge in this community and this society where we're not able to let our guard down, you know?
Right. We're not allowed to be human. And that's the thing. That's my whole mission is for men to know that it's your birthright to be a human being.
Yeah.
And part of being a human being is experiencing your emotions and processing them. Right. That's part of it. And truthfully, if you want to live a dynamic life, if you want to, be at peace, you have to go through the trenches of dealing with trauma, dealing with the pain, dealing with those things that we don't normally deal with. That's the only way to get to the other side.
Can you talk to me a little bit about, so, and I'm off script now because now it's running. What is so interesting, and it's a good thing, but then also I feel like we need to do better because again, these conversations are being had because of the time and place where we are, where 30 something year olds, 40 something year olds, and not saying it's too late, 67,
Mm-hmm.
you have to deal with it, all their traumas from your past, but excuse me, not corona.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm interested in knowing is from a younger brother, father to son, mother to son, what are some of the conversations you can start having with your child or your young boy or your young Black boy that would just kind of help them to not deal with these things that I had to deal with, you had to deal with, because I'm feeling like they're getting it at such an older age, they're correcting it, which is great, but I want to tackle it now, you know?
One of the things that my father did that I actually applauded him for. I mean, I never got a chance to tell him, was
Right.
that he let me be. He let me be who I was. So if I cried, he let me cry. He never he never told me don't cry because boys don't cry. He never told me that, or neither did my mother. And so I think that's one of those things. It's like if your child is having an emotional moment, let them have that emotional moment. I don't even think it's a conversation even to be had sometimes. Just let that child be,
Right.
and create the space where you're sitting there and also share your pain. As parents, I say like, I'm just now getting to know my mother.
Mm.
So many things about her life that I didn't know. And now we're talking, have a conversation, and she's telling me about her mistakes, her failures, and things like that. And it's made us so much closer, and it's made me share even more with her. So it's like, again, that transparency thing, like, just creating a space, letting your child be
Yeah.
who they are emotionally, and also being transparent about your fears. Like, I did a panel with a group of parents, and, they were talking about COVID. I said, talk to your kids about your fears of COVID, your uncertainty, your anxiety, because that's going to make them feel safe. Like, okay, I'm not alone. Even my mom is going through this, but tell them, but reassure them that you're going to get through it, obviously, but being honest and vulnerable about where you are, I think is so important.
It's so funny you said that. A lot of people don't realize that your mom, your dad were people before they were.
Before they had you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and I recently found something out about my parents. I was like, oh, so y'all was just out here like that, And it's like
Yeah.
I never thought about those type of things, but it gave me another perspective as it pertains to how I communicate with them. And I always, I've had, kind of these conversations, and something I took from someone who said something. I feel like it's G Smalls, but he says that I believe he said, really being, open and honest with your kids, to your point, is just so healthy, because you're really able to let you're living with them, and then they are not your parents need to realize that they don't own you. Have this
Right.
idea of, I want my kid to be a lawyer and have this amount of money and be good and all this type of stuff, but at the end of the day, the parents have to realize that you don't own your child's life. And,
Exactly.
and that you have to let them live and just be there to them support.
Absolutely. You know what? It's something you just made me think of something. Again, my father, the two things he gave me was to be my emotional self, and the second thing was, I never forget, one day I was 16 and he sat me, my brother and sister down, and he cooked us breakfast, and he said, "Listen, me and your mom are going to get a divorce, and it's my fault because I have a drug problem."
uh,
And I just, even in that moment, I was like, wow. Like, I was even more caught up in the fact that he was so vulnerable and honest enough to even share that with me. That lesson showed me that it's okay to be vulnerable, to be honest, to be transparent. And so, like, those two lessons, right, have blessed my entire life, and it's blessed the entire lives of so many men that I've had the opportunity of coaching because of that. So I saw that example.
well,
And they didn't end up getting a divorce, but I'm just saying, but even in that moment, it was just so, like, powerful to see a black man share with his children, like, yo, like, me and my wife are getting a divorce, and it's my fault because I have an issue.
and
Just that
that's
simple thing.
and it's so crazy that doesn't, again, you don't see that often, and I think it's so important for us to see that ownership, that
Yeah.
accountability, and I
Yes.
have to see what you want to be and examples of things you want to be, and that prime example right there. And that's why it's important for us to share these stories, have these conversations, because you need to know that everybody is the same. And I think so many
Yeah.
times, typically within our community, we think, oh, this one person, but he crazy, or he can't deal with it, or this person, they dealing with whatever, and we don't realize that we're all, because we don't say anything, we don't realize
Right.
we're all dealing with the same thing, and that we could actually help each other if these
Yeah.
conversations were more open.
Absolutely. We're all dealing with something in some shape or form or the other.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I think that's comforting to know that you're not alone. But I think for us, I think that's where the shame comes in, because we think we're the only person who's struggling. And that's why I always encourage dialogue, because I want to rid, especially men, of the shame.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Wow. I always tell, or what I would like to start telling more people is, just like you have the conversations with your boys about, oh, this girl I smashed or this guy or whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm.
So open about those conversations, so open about those barbershop talks. Talk about your mental health, man. Hey, bro, I just, I'm dealing real with work. It's stressing me out.
Mm-hmm.
Lay it off. I just want to hear it. I just want to vent,
Right.
and I think that if we took more of the conversations within our friend groups and
Absolutely.
did it really could be so helpful as it pertains to people's mental health,
You know what's interesting, right? So they have these groups called, like shared, it's called clinically known as shared experience or lived experiences. And those, it's like cell groups of people who've been through the same thing, right? Say it's a group of depression or people who've made it through depression and just their experience with it. Those groups are just as effective as traditional therapy.
Wow.
Why? Because the connection is the tangibility. Like you've been through something that I've been through and you made it through. Wow. So you can literally tell me how to get through it.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So like that, to your point, there is power in confession. Only what you confess can be healed.
Right. Wow.
Right. And so like to your point, I think that's important. But here's the thing with men, and I say this in the book, there's data that shows that men on average speak 10,000 words a day. Women on average speak 30,000 words a day. And here's the thing, your healing is in your words.
Mm.
And so my job, part of what I do is to get men to expand their emotional lexicon, to expand their vocabularies, to use more words.
Right.
So I don't want to hear that you type.
Right.
Because I don't know what that means.
Right. Right.
I want to hear you flesh out that tightness.
Right.
Flesh it out for me. Flesh it out for me. You see what I'm saying? Like, give me a body. Give me something that I can connect to, because then I can help you.
Right.
Then I can connect. You get what I'm saying? So, like, I want men to go beyond I'm mad tight. I want them to get to a space of like, yo, I feel like I got the weight of the world on my shoulders. That is something that I can see.
Right.
That is something I can relate to. That is something I can feel.
Wow. Wow.
You see what I'm saying? Something is shifting is that.
Right. So as we right now, and I've kind of tweeted this out like recently, I feel like I just know people are quarantining and they are alone in their thoughts. And they say, and I don't mind as a devil's workshop. And it's just a point where you have the time to process. And actually, prime example, I was in DC for the March on Washington. Everything was great. The Chadwick Boseman thing, when we found out he died, I was emotional, definitely, sad or whatever. But I was in DC, the March. I was with my friends. We were having a good time. Everything, I was manageable. I was managing it. I was functioning. I got home Sunday night by myself. Monday morning, felt this weight, this emotional whatever feeling, because I didn't have anything to pull me aside. There wasn't a friend saying, hey, let's go to lunch, or hey, let's do it. Was literally you're in your four walls. And I say that to say I'm nervous about the depression rates, suicide, the mental health during this time of quarantine, where we're supposed to be away from our loved ones, our close ones, our friends, and even work, even going to working from home and working in an office. You still get to interact. You see people on the train, whatever. You're so compressed in one space by yourself, and I'm just wondering, how can men handle that depression? Like, are there some tips that you have while we're here in this quarantine time?
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest things that I've shared, I've been asked this question a lot. I think one of the biggest things is it's three things. And I always say this. Two, I think first one is engage in your imagination rather than rumination. So imagination is thinking about the positive things that can happen, things that, the positive things that can happen, right? Rumination is thinking about the things that have happened, the bad things that have happened, the future things that, anxiety is future things. Rumination is things that have happened or currently happening right now, just constantly playing that thing over and over again. The reason why I say engage in imagination is because imagination is good for the brain. our brains are wired for negativity, which is why it's easier for a person to recall a negative experience than a positive experience,
Uh,
right? And so when we think about positive things and when we tell ourselves positive things, we reshape our brain. We
mm,
create a new neural pathway, which is called neuroplasticity, right? So the plasticity of our brains by nature is negative. So we have to combat that by thinking about positive things. And I know that that sounds very like cliche. It sounds very like, eye roll, right? But the reality is that a lot of people, I believe that suicide is the death of imagination. I
wow.
saw my way. So there were times where I was dealing with suicide ideation. I had to see my way into the person that I am today.
Mm,
Otherwise, I wouldn't have made it. I had to envision, I had to imagine who
right,
purpose could be beyond that depression I was in my 20s. You know what I'm
right.
saying? So definitely, I say engage in your imagination, not your rumination. I
Mm,
don't care what you're thinking about, as long as it's positive, as long as it's something that makes you feel good, something that's bringing you joy. Think about who you could be. Bro, think about all the people who are now millionaires in COVID, who were not millionaires beforehand.
wow.
Think about the people who created businesses in the
Yeah.
middle of COVID that are now thriving. They
Yep.
had to engage in what?
Yep. Imagination.
Their imagination.
Right.
So what is true for them is true for us.
Yep.
So engage in your imagination. Second thing I would say is to remain calm, right? Remain calm and know that you are not the only person who is going through it. You
Mm,
have to tell yourself that you have to keep yourself calm because if you allow your mind to race, you allow anxiety to set in and take over, you actually can incite the symptoms of COVID, right? That is known as psychosomatic.
oof.
That's how powerful the mind and body is. What the mind can't handle, it imposes on the body.
Mm,
So remain calm, right? And the third thing is rather simple. My tips are rather simple. Find things that bring you joy.
mm,
If it's creating TikTok videos, if it's doing TikTok challenges, if it's watching SpongeBob, whatever it is, right? Do something that brings you joy because here's the reality, right? Life is happening to us, but life also happens from us.
right.
So understand that you are responsible for what happens from you
Right.
and you're empowered to do so. So that is those are the three things that I've been saying. You know, there are many things that I could say, but I think those three things are important. We got to engage in our imagination. We got to daydream. We got to wonder. We got to think about the possibilities. We got to think about inventions. We got to think about who we're going to be, who
Wow.
we want to be. We got to think about, say you get a bag of money, what you going to spend it on? Like just do that
Right.
and remain calm and stay in community. Stay in
Mm,
community. Stay in community. We don't grow in isolation. We grow only in the context of community. Stay in connection with people.
wow.
Stay connected.
Perfect. Perfect. You guys had that tip. All those tips. Listen. Um, so another topic is, and you touched on it a little bit, just about all the, the police brutality, black men having targets on their backs, things like that. And I will say, I feel like I am a little bit triggered um,
Mm-hmm.
by these things, by seeing it so much. I told the story before that I was in Miami a couple months ago, and I saw this guy who looked like a chip police officer, but he was plain clothes, didn't have anything on, but had the big glasses or whatever. And I was walking by him, and he like reached for like something on the side of his pocket or whatever, and my heart skipped. It was a white guy, and my heart skipped because I just thought he was going to shoot me, because I thought at this point it's just so escalated that they're just going to start shooting black men just in general, just because. But I've realized that I'm triggered.
Right.
How can how are we supposed to think about these things that we constantly see on TV, on social media, read in the news, and things of that nature? How do black men deal with those things?
Well, I think it's important to have conversations about it. Number one, like definitely talk about what you're feeling, and what you just share right now is important. Share it with other men. Have create a text thread, create a Zoom group. You know what I mean, where you can just talk about how you feel. That's the most important. But number two, I want us to understand this as Black people. We are the most dynamic people on the planet. right? So I don't ever want us to live in a space of victimization. Are we being victimized? Absolutely. But are we victims? No. And I always want us to be mindful of the power that we possess. We create culture. We created this country. We have power. And so like my thing is, while you honor, so that's the thing about being a human being. Being a human being is very much both and very much gray, right? So while you can feel triggered on one hand and honor that experience, you also can feel empowered and honor that experience as well. Because if you lend yourself to the feeling triggered, and that can lead to anxiety, that can lead to you going down a path you don't need to go down.
Right.
Now, here's the thing: you always are aware of that you can be triggered, but you need to hold on to the fact that you have power. You need to live in power. I have power, and life happens from me. Right. So that's the thing. We gotta work that balance. We have to find the space to grieve and to honor that space of feeling triggered and feeling angry and pissed off, right? But then we also need to take that anger, that construction that I was talking about, and construct something with it.
Wow. Wow. All right, guys, we could be on here all day. I know people gotta go back to lunch break. Thank you guys for tuning in. But Sir Thrival Mode is
Yes, sir.
Purvis Taylor's book. They can get it. Well, when they go and check out the recap of this on our website, we're going to have a link. But where can they go and get it?
They can get it off of thrivalmode.com and off of amazon.com.
Perfect. And what else can we look forward to from Purvis?
Oh, bro, I'm moderating a panel this week for Ashley. Do you know who King Ashley Ann is?
Ashley Ann, no.
She's like she's the $1 million chick that teaches how to make $1 million. She has a conference called Accelerate. I'm moderating 2 panels this week. And there's some big, forgive me, there's some big people I'm interviewing, but I don't. Okay. They're huge. I'm sure you probably know who they are.
Okay.
Big Ben, I think Big Ben X or something like
yep.
that. You know who that is, right? So yeah, I'm interviewing him.
Nice.
I have that coming up this week. I'm also speaking at a conference at Berkeley, UC Berkeley. It's called the Be Fearless Summit. That's happening at the end of this month. And bro, I'm out here coaching lives every day.
Guys, make sure you follow him. If you listen to this and you felt inspired, which I know you have, please check out his social media. Follow him on Instagram. Get his book. You need to continue to hear these type of conversations, hear the things that he's saying. It's just awesome. Thank you, Purvis, for definitely joining and having this conversation. We deeply appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Brother, thank you so much for having me, man. God bless.
Thank you so much. You guys, thank you for tuning in. And make sure y'all check out this recap. It'll be on the website soon. See you later. Have a good day.
You too, brother.